welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Bethany. I'm the girl behind Well Loved Knits, and in this video, I am very excited to share with you some of the items in my stash and what I plan on working up with them. So originally, I was going to share with you every single thing that I had in my stash, but that would be a very big task, and I think we would be sitting here for an hour plus. I personally don't want to edit that video. And I also thought it would be a little unnecessary to share every single thing that I have. While it is much thinner than it has been in a while, I did a destash a couple of months ago, just clearing out some old skeins scraps from previous projects and just fibers that I knew I wasn't going to work with and donate those, which has been really great. So my stash is pretty thin. At the same time, I thought it would be worthwhile to share with you some of the fibers that I'm prioritizing working up this year. And yeah, I have some cool skeins that I've collected from last year that I didn't get a chance to knit up, and I'm going to do so in 2022. I hope this is interesting for you guys, and I'm sure that even though I'm only going to do a select number of skeins and projects, this is still gonna be a very, very chatty video. So grab some tea, grab your knitting, and let's get into it. I want to share something that's currently on my needles. This yarn combination right here you might be familiar with if you've seen one of my knit and chat videos, if you sat down with me to knit and chat. These two yarns right here, I was so curious if they would work well together because I was kindly gifted this Cardiff cashmere yarn last year over the summer. And it was one of those yarns that was just so beautiful, so soft, like it's 100% cashmere, so it is so luxurious. I was in love with the fiber, but not so much the color. So it's a very minty green. And if you've paid attention to kind of some of the things that I like to wear, it's mainly neutral colors. There are some warmer tones in there. Green is a difficult one for me. I like very muted shades of green instead of this very minty shade. So this is Knitting for Olive Silk Mohair in the Dusty Artichoke colorway, because that's actually what inspired this skein color actually, because it was at the time where sweater number 15, 16, the one with cables, I can never remember the name, sweater 14? People were knitting up that sweater with the Dusty Artichoke combination, the merino and the mohair from Knitting for Olive. And that's kind of what I imagined this color to be. So I saw it online and that I selected this color. And when it came in, it wasn't that color. I had been musing in my head, okay, how can I bring this tone down? How can I tone this minty green color down? And I decided to go ahead and purchase some Dusty Artichoke from Knitting for Olive in the hopes that together the combination would be a little bit more muted. And I'm very happy to say that I think it managed to do that. At least when I knit it up in swatch form in my knit and chat, I was very excited about the result. Doesn't show up so much on camera. In person, and now that I'm knitting a work in progress with it, the larger fabric, you can definitely notice some variation in the fabric itself, which I think looks really nice, and I just really like how the two colors play together. So what I've decided to cast on with these fibers is a sweater. I'm calling it the 2x1 jumper. I'll share more details about it when it's in a nicer state. So I'm working on this one and I'm really enjoying it. The fabric is so nice. These two fibers are, I would say, on the more luxurious side. Knitting for Olive is known to be a little bit more on the pricier side, a little bit higher quality, I would say. And then the Cardiff cashmere, also very similar. It's 100% cashmere, so it's more of that luxurious style yarn. Definitely more of an investment, but like I was saying, the swatch that was knit up and the fabric that's being worked up on my current work in progress is very luxurious. So I do think that if you're looking into splurging for the materials of a project, if you're looking to invest in those pieces, I would definitely recommend these fibers, but I can't say too much about them because I haven't finished the sweater. I haven't worn a garment knit in this combination. So just take that as you will. But yeah, I can say though that this is definitely a lot of fun to work up. So it's been a big joy to work with. And I'm very excited for the finished object that will come as a result. All right, another combination that I'm very excited to work up, and I think it's actually going to be the same sweater design, is these two yarns right here. One is from Rowan Yarns and one is from Drops Design. So I'll talk about the Rowan yarn first. This one was also kindly gifted to me last year. It is a cotton cashmere, so it's a little bit more of a summery fiber, I would say. The pattern that this yarn was originally intended for was a wrap pattern that's by Rowan Yarns. It's in, I think, their spring-summer collection of 2021. So it's a very lovely design, but since I knit up the swatch in my last knit and chat, I did notice it was the same weight as the cashmere and the Cardiff cashmere and the Knitting for Olive knit together. And since that is the case, I was thinking that, you know, as I like to knit two samples of things that I like to create as patterns, this might be another version of the same sweater. I would say both of these are a little bit more rough than the combination that I just shared with you. Like I said, this is mixed with cotton, so it has that stiffness that cotton tends to have in skein form. But after it was blocked, I will say that it was a little bit more flexible, a little bit more drapey than it feels at the moment. And then of course the Kid Silk from Drops Design. This one right here is really nice. I have a lot of great things to say about Kid Silk. I worked on a cardigan last year with Drops Kid Silk and Drops Air held together, and I really liked the final result a lot more than Diablo yarn, and I would say that this is pretty affordable as well. Not as cheap as Diablo, but nice. Nice and affordable, I would say. So I would say that the combination here looks really strange together. It definitely doesn't look like it goes very well, but I was very surprised that I enjoyed the fabric that was knit up in the swatch that I did recently. It's not completely uniform like I had thought. When I was looking at it after I had just knit it up, it really did, to me, in person, look very uniform. But then as I was reviewing the footage and now that it's washed and blocked, I can definitely see that there's more of a variation there, but it almost looks kind of like stone washed. So I really enjoy this combination together. It's strange, but really nice. Funny though, with these two yarns, they both came to me in a way that I wasn't expecting. Maybe I should rephrase that. They both came looking in a way that I was not anticipating, in the sense that when I had selected the colors, they looked completely different online versus what they look like in person. So I've mentioned this before, but this was supposed to be kind of like a sage green. Maybe they didn't give me the sage green. I'm not sure, but this is definitely a more gray tone to me than sage green. And I'll even add in some pictures of what the intended design is. So the wrap top from Rowan, so that you can kind of see that the green was definitely more pronounced in the publication than what this is. So that's making me think that maybe I didn't get the green color that I was expecting, but that's okay. Because I do really like this color as well, and I do have something else that's green that I'm working up, so no worries there. But then also for the Drops Kid Silk, I will say that online this was definitely a lighter color, less blue than what's being picked up. You can see on the camera that it's a very blue mohair, and it was definitely not that color online. It definitely looked more closer to this. So obviously when I got this one in the mail and held it next to this one, I was shocked and a little concerned that it wasn't going to work for the intended purpose, but I'm really happy about the stonewash effect, so we dodged a bullet there. But yeah, like I said, I'm planning on knitting up that 2x1 jumper sweater pattern that I'm currently working on the needles. The first sample is in progress, and I'm thinking that maybe this combination would be a good one. Or just a nice sweater, because I have a sweater quantity's worth of this yarn, and I think it would be really nice to have a nice neutral, but with some intrigue, sweater. Okay, so at the risk of showing you things that you've already seen before in my knit and chat, I'm going to share this with you one more time. So this is the Eco Lana by We Are Knitters that I'm very excited to dive into. Yeah, I know I've talked about this one a lot, but please bear with me for those of you who are new here. The Eco Lana is a more more rustic type feel fiber compared to what We Are Knitters normally sells. They sell a lot of like really soft merino yarns and like fluffy yarn as well. And this one caught my eye because I have been really interested in getting into more rustic yarn, and We Are Knitters is a brand that I'm very familiar with. I've worked with a lot of their products in the past. Right, so this is Eco Lana 100% wool in the raw brown colorway. And it's just a really nice fiber. I'm excited to knit up a cardigan. I know I've talked about it before, but just a simple staple piece that I think will work really well. A lot of you had commented after I talked about this in our knit and chat about the fact that you were knitting up a cardigan with the same fiber and you're really loving it. So that gives me a lot of hope for when I eventually cast this one on. My hands are a little full at the moment, so I am not going to cast it on this month. Probably mid-February is a more realistic timeline. But I am very excited to do so, and I think it's going to just be, again, like a very classic staple piece to have in my closet. Hopefully, if I can, you know, get the design right. Last year, I definitely indulged in color, and here are some skeins that I'm very excited about. Not my typical colors, I would say. The red maybe more so than the yellow, but I really couldn't resist because the skeins were so pretty. I'm not doing that again this year. One of my resolutions is to not buy yarn just because it's pretty, only if I have a purpose for it. Last year I learned that success with color comes in the form of accessories, so I'm going to be using these to knit up some socks. I think what I'm going to end up doing is getting some contrasting colors, maybe something that I can use. I would use these more as accent colors, I think. So these skeins right here are from Big Little Yarn Co. Melanie from the Cozy Cardigans podcast. She posts also on YouTube, but she's also an indie dyer. That's her main thing. And I purchased these skeins from Melanie, I want to say in the middle of last year. These are her trusty sock bases, so I know that these will be really great for knitting up some socks, and I want to use these for the contrasting color of some colorwork socks. One of the things that I really want to do this year is to get more comfortable with colorwork, finish a project that is a colorwork project, and these, I think a sock is the best place to start in that case, and I'm really interested in working with these really, really lovely skeins. This one in particular, I have to say that this one is my favorite Matsuri. The colors in this were just unreal. As soon as I saw it when she teased it for her drop in the summertime, I knew I had to do it. So I even set an alarm, I want to say for like 4 a.m. so that I would be sure that I would be able to pick up some of these skeins because they were just so beautiful. So these are her trusty sock base. It's 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon, so perfect for socks. 400 meters per 100 grams, 4-ply. So yeah, I just really love everything that she produces, and I would really recommend you guys checking her out. Okay, because we need some more pops of color and on the Big Little Yarn Co. theme, I had also purchased 2 other skeins from her. This is a DK weight yarn. It's 100% superwash merino, and it is 225 meters per 100 grams. It is a 4-ply yarn. And again, this is also something that I saw when I saw this one. It was a very, very beautiful blue color. Now, it is not blueberry blue. This is more reminiscent to the cardigan number 7 that I wear and love. That cardigan has faded a little bit, so this is definitely more of an electric sky blue, but I think it's gonna be a really lovely summer top. That's kind of what I'm envisioning with it. A square neck top is something that I think I would like to knit up for spring, summertime. And I think that this will be a really lovely color for the spring and summer. So I'm very excited to work up this as well. So those were all 4 of the skeins that I purchased from Melanie Mel from Big Little Yarn Co. So I think so lovely. So you can see them all next to each other. These are all from the same collection, and I just think that they're so beautiful. And I'm very excited to work with all of them. That was definitely something I did last year. Last year I was a little bit more curious in the more hand-dyed yarn. I didn't work with it, but I purchased quite a few skeins that were more hand-dyed, that had a little bit more variation in them, variegation in the yarn. So that is probably what I'm going to be working up a lot this year in the form of these skeins here. Another very luxurious combination that I'm very excited to get on my needles is this one right here. It's more knitting for olive, except this time it's the merino and the mohair together. These are both in a nice white, classic white shade, if I remember correctly. Yeah, this is a cream, and I believe this is also cream. So I believe both of these colors are cream in their 2 different bases. Now, to knit beautiful sweaters, you don't need to indulge in these very high-end yarns, but I was very curious because a lot of knitters that I respect say amazing things and work with this yarn. So I wanted to give it a try myself. If you remember this yarn right here, this mohair, I actually purchased for my wedding. I was thinking that I was going to knit up a shawl just before, but given the fact that we kind of realized that we were going to get married last minute, not last minute, but we didn't have as much notice as I would have been able to knit up something for my wedding, so I didn't end up making a shawl with this fiber. And to be honest, I can't really see myself wearing something just out of white fluffy mohair. I couldn't really envision anything that I would want to knit up with it, if that makes sense. So that's why I ended up purchasing the merino from Knitting for Olive, so that I could pair these 2 together and maybe have just like a very simple raglan style sweater. I was thinking maybe the no frills sweater by Petite Knit if this meets gauge. I think a simple white raglan sweater is definitely something that I can get some use out of, and I think it would be just a perfect basic that might not be so exciting to knit up because it's just plain white, but it would definitely be a welcome addition for me in my wardrobe, so I would not complain in that way. I have heard that the no frills sweater though is one of those things that it's just like, it's a commitment. It's not a lot of fun to make, but it is something that you absolutely want to have in your closet, so we'll see if I strike up the courage to do that. I don't really foresee me working with this yarn at the start of 2022. This is definitely this is most likely going to be a sweater that is cast on maybe at the end of the year, or cast on and just slowly knit throughout the year. An ongoing whip the entire year. We'll see. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a commitment because look how nice and thin that yarn is. It's very lovely though. It's very, very nice. Last year I went on a trip to the US and I was very excited to find some really lovely yarn. Not in a place that I was really expecting because I was in the South, very warm part of the country. So I wasn't actually expecting there to be a lot of knitting shops, places to browse for materials. And in Savannah, Georgia, I was really excited to stumble across some really great yarn shops, one of them being the Frayed Knot. if you're in the area, definitely go check them out because the owner is a very sweet woman. And I just enjoyed that experience. I talk about it in one of my knitting podcasts. I'll leave a link if you're curious to hear a little bit about the shop itself when I went in. I picked up some yarn that I was very just in love with. I saw it in the window and I just thought it was so unique that I had to pick it up. So it's this right here. Now it looks a little bit more pink. This one right here looks more pink in the camera than I feel like it looks like. So the colors might not be showing exactly how I see them because I find that the camera always picks this up way more pink than it is. There's actually some strips of copper that are just so lovely. Maybe if I go like this, it might be more interesting. You might be able to see it better. But there you can see there's some copper. It is pink, but I feel like the copper is just much more obvious than it is on camera. And then I'll do this one as well. This one has less variegation in it. It's a nice aubergine color. And again, in the camera, it looks a little bit more purple than what is being shown to my naked eye. Manos del Uruguay is a cooperative for women in the country. And I just thought that was really nice to support, as well as just looking at how beautiful these two skeins are right here. Now, if you've been here for a while and you saw this podcast episode in particular, you'll know that my parents' dog ripped up one of the skeins, and I'm still slowly trying to salvage it. So right now I have just 2 skeins that I can work with. My intention for this yarn was to knit a striped sweater. What I was thinking was the agave sweater. Yeah, what really struck me about this yarn is just how metallic it looks. I really love that like shine that is so apparent here. It's really, really beautiful. And I just think that it would make the combination together, not my typical, but yeah, again, that metallic-y shine, I think it will just create something very unique, and I'm hoping that it will look good on me. Yeah, so this is 70% superwash merino and 30% modal. It is 320 meters per skein. And I think it's going to be very lovely. If I'm able to salvage that second skein, I will be able, I hope, to make a long sleeve sweater with some thin copper pink stripes. Otherwise, I'm going to need to find a way to get more of this yarn so that I would be able to make that sweater. It would also look nice, I think, as a t-shirt. So I think we cannot go wrong. But this is definitely something I'm going to cast on for the summer months. And hopefully we'll finish something up before it gets too cold to wear it. Okay, so talking about warm weather knits, this yarn right here is something that I've never tried before, but I love the brand. It's by Drops Design. It's Drops Flora. There have been a lot of discussions, a lot of people talking about Flora recently, and I'm very interested to give it a try. I have nothing but good things to say about my first impressions of the yarn. I haven't knit a swatch or anything, but it just looks like a nice affordable wool yarn. It's a mix between alpaca and wool, but it's not as soft as the alpaca mix because there's less of an alpaca content in it. There's more wool, I want to say. So it's 65% wool and 35% alpaca, and it's 210 meters per 50 grams. So I have quite a few skeins of this yarn in this like white mist colorway. I'm not 100% sure. It's color 22. And I have quite a few skeins to make a more spring top that I'm hoping I will be able to cast on and complete for spring, summer, for that warm transition month. So either for spring to summer or then from summer to fall months would be really nice to have a knit top What I'm thinking for this yarn in particular is a more boat neck style t-shirt top. If I don't come up with something of my own design, an alternative instead of that boat neck would be maybe the Friday sweater by Petite Knit. I've checked and this does look like it matches the recommended yarn, which would be really nice. And it would just be a nice neutral top that I would be able to get so much wear out of. Again, going for those closet staples this year, no matter how tedious it might seem to me. I'm very excited to work on those projects that will force me to enjoy the process. So if that's broken rib, then so be it. But then at the same time, I do have some sort of an idea of what I could make on my own. So this is also something that I could potentially use for a design of my own. Like I said, that boat neck would be really interesting. I'm not normally somebody who comes up with a lot of ideas for warm weather, so I would be interested to kind of try that one out. Like I said, there's a lot of twists to this yarn. It feels a lot more durable than the alpaca mix that I've been used to knitting up in the past. And I just think this one looks like it's going to be a nice one to work with. And again, it's a classic color. It's going to be a wardrobe staple for sure. So more information will be coming. I will tell you more about how I feel about Drops Flora, because at this moment, I'm just going off of the feel of the skein and not really like how it's been working up in a swatch or anything like that. All right, so these are pretty interesting. These I've had in my stash for a long time, since 2019, I believe. I'll show you all of them together. So this is some European wool that I got from some shop on Etsy. If I'm able to find it, I will link it, but it's been quite a long time since I've purchased from this shop, so I'm not even sure if it's still open. But this is coming from like Lithuania or some country in Europe that shears and spins their own natural wool. So I purchased in bulk some of this wool right here in the natural shade. So this is undyed, it's just spun up into these hanks. And I was using these to do some hand dye adventures, some natural dyeing specifically. That's something that I've done a couple of times in the past. I've dyed some of these skeins with avocados, and then last year I did some onions. So these are red onion skins, I want to say. One is yellow onions and one is red onions. So I believe this one, no. Are they both? Yes, these are both from red onion skins. And last year, I actually shared a video on how I did this. So it was a lot of fun. This was not the first time that I did some natural dyeing, but it was the first time that I dyed with onion skins, and I really, really love them. We are onion eaters in my family. My husband and I are onion eaters. We love onions. So I collect a lot of onion skins, and I have a whole bag that I kind of want to dye these with. These are my last 3 skeins. I want to say I had about 10 skeins to work with, and now I'm down to the 3. And I would really love to use up those onion skins that I have to dye these again so that maybe they would match. Although with natural dyeing, it's always kind of a gamble. You don't know what you're gonna get, and I think that's the most fun. I would really love to knit some slippers with this. Some like really warm socks or slippers, like those felted ones that everybody is loving these days. Otherwise, if I don't manage to do that, if let's say I dye these up and they're just completely the wrong color, they don't really look great together, look a little strange. My other idea was to do another punch needle. So then I could dye these with avocados, the onions that I have, and maybe do something else as well and get a whole variety of colors, and then do a needle punch. I did a needle punch kit last year from Hands of a Maker, and I really, really love her stuff, so I'm definitely going to link that in the description. These skeins are so rustic. So I don't want a garment in these. If I did have some sort of wearable item, it would definitely be those slippers like I was talking about. I still think it's even too much for socks. They're very thick. It's a very thick wool. So I'm thinking it would either be really great for those slippers to try those out, but then again, if the color of the wool is so different, I would say that I would try out doing a punch needle, because then I would be able to really appreciate all the different variations of the yarn, the different colors of the natural dye. So yeah, I'm very excited to get these out of my stash, because that's another thing as well. These have been sitting in my stash for a while, and I'm kind of just holding on to them for no reason. I should make some use out of them, so it would be nice to have a project like that. So another yarn that you're very familiar with is this Garthanor number 2 yarn. This one is super nice. It's that crazy variation that I'm really not sure I know what I want to do with it, but I think what I'm going to do is knit up some socks. So I'm going to have some socks on my needles. I haven't cast on some socks yet, so maybe this will be the first sock of 2022 that I cast on. But like I said, I have a lot of plans for socks this year, and this is one of them. I think that's the best thing that I can kind of come up with just this one skein. A lot of you guys were saying that it would be lovely as a sweater, and I definitely agree with you. I'm not sure. I think I have a lot of sweaters on the horizon for 2022, so I think doing socks in this while I have only one skein makes a lot more sense for me. And then again, I wanted to share this reddish, brownish, apparently I don't know the difference between red and brown. This one's definitely red. But anyway, I also have leftover from the gift that I made at the end of last year. I added these as accent toes to a pair of socks that I knit up, and I think I will use this also for some more accents, so this will be nice to have in my stash. I think I'm definitely going to order more Garthanor sock yarn. I really enjoyed working with it, and I love the colors that come with it, and I just love the feeling of that rustic sock. So one of my resolutions for this year is to knit for others, and socks is definitely it. My father, my brother, 2 people that I really want to knit up some cozy socks for. So one of them will be getting red toes. Or brown, I don't know. And then these will be for me. Yeah, so the aspirations for this year are very high. I've talked about a lot of fibers and projects that I'm hoping to work up. A lot of them are going to be very thin yarn, so we'll see if I'm going to be able to do all of that. Last one that I want to share is one that is a work in progress on the needles, but will be frogged. I'm pretty confident that I'm going to rip it apart for like the 5th time. It's the moss stitch sweater that I shared with you guys last year. I was working on a raglan style sweater with some very thick ribbing up at the top and moss stitch throughout. It had adapted from a cardigan to a sweater. It went from half moss stitch and stockinette to full moss stitch, and I'm just not sure I'm happy with how it's working up right now. So I'm going to frog it, but I still want to work up this combination. This yarn has been in my stash for a really long time, and I should use that first in, first out mentality to really get this yarn out and make sure that it's being used, because it's a perfect gray yarn. It's just very simple, very plain, and it will make a really nice sweater. I know it. It's 100% wool. I can't remember what the brand is, but I did get it from Hobby Yarn. And together with We Are Knitters fuzzy yarn, so kind of like a mohair, I think it would look really nice. And it does. It works up into a really nice fabric. And I really love the way that the fuzzy yarn looks on in skein form. There are little flecks of neutral color, some browns, some grays, some black, tan. It's a really lovely yarn. However, I am not seeing that variation like I want to in the sweater. And the reason I think that is because I'm using that moss stitch. So I'm wondering if the moss stitch just is not great for this combination of yarn. I was thinking that these flecks would be a little bit more pronounced, but maybe the moss stitch is kind of taking away from that. So I'm frogging it. It's gonna be very painful for me. I haven't done it yet. I'm staring at it right now and I feel really bad. I'm really sorry. Very apologetic to that project, but I don't think that it's going to be something I'm going to work up immediately. Maybe one of those that I wait until the end of the year. I don't know, we'll see. I'm not gonna be very strict with the timeline, the order. I'm also going to allow myself to work within, with my inspiration, what I'm feeling inspired to do. I'm not going to say, okay, I have to do all of these projects within this timeline that I've set for myself, because that's gonna make it I'm gonna rebel against that. I just know it. So, yes, but I do really think that gray yarn needs to come out of my stash. It needs to be in a finished project because that's something that I've had for a long time, since 2019. So definitely need to get it on and off the needles in a project that I will love. So I'm about to lose my voice. I'm really glad that I didn't show you guys everything that's in my stash because I feel like I haven't scratched the surface. And these are all things that I have accumulated over a long time, couple of years, that I just feel like I can still get some use out of in the form of gift knitting or whenever inspiration strikes. But the ones that I shared with you are the ones that I'm definitely most excited to dive into this year, for good reason. A lot of nice fibers that are very luxurious, and then also some great colors. There are a lot of different fibers that will challenge me to learn new skills, to do color work, for example, you know, come out of my comfort zone and go into more warm weather knits. And as you can see, a lot of thin yarn. So I'm really holding true to that goal to prioritize projects on smaller needles, and I'm very excited to do so. So I feel very inspired to tackle these projects in 2022. While it wasn't the full stash tour, it was definitely a lot. And I thank you guys for sticking around to the end. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe to stick around, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.